with any burgeoning industry, with any new climate shift, if you will, within a technology area, there comes social change, there comes regulatory change, there comes all kinds of changes. And of course, the law changes with it. I'm pleased to introduce Patrick Neale, Patrick Neale and Associates, a drone attorney.
Yes, sir.
And I would imagine, talk about the Wild West, legally speaking.
It is truly a Wild West. If you think about it, Part 107 was only adopted less than a year ago. So really the government hasn't even issued a full set of regulations on it. The FAA is trying to figure out what to do with it. The industry is trying to figure out what to do with it. And the whole world is really trying to figure out what to do with all these little things flying around, making a lot of noise and running into houses. And so I think where we're at now is truly a Wild West. The adoption of case law, which is normally what us lawyers rely on, is almost non-existent. I mean, the only real case law on abrogation easements and things like that goes back to the 1950s with the Cosby case. I mean, so we're really looking at this all being a whole brave new world.
I would imagine that is both a tremendous opportunity as well as a total nightmare.
It is both of those things. It's a great opportunity because it gives a lawyer an opportunity to really create from whole cloth almost a body of law. The problem is lawyers are used to building on top of old bodies of law, and we don't have that body of law to build on. And so what we're doing is having to rely on old principles. One of the big areas that I've discussed with clients and people here at the show and everything else is, what do we do about liability issues? Who really has the liability, and what do you need to do to protect yourself from that liability? And those are the big issues that I think the commercial drone operator needs to look at. Not just are they operating under the FAA rules and regs, but are they operating under local regs, because localities and states are starting to pass regs? And then on top of that, are you operating in an industry prudent manner so that if you do get sued, you have a defense against it? And then finally on top of that, do you have the appropriate insurance necessary so that if you do get sued, you've got somebody else to help pay for the defense?
Ouch. A lot of things to consider. Now, you're a pilot as well, correct?
Yes, I am.
I would imagine coming from the manned arena to the unmanned arena brings along not just a good body of knowledge from the standpoint of the mistakes and such that aviation has made heretofore, but the tremendous change that's happening as aviation adjusts to a whole new realm of airframes in the system, especially those airframes that may be guided a half a world away.
Well, and that's one of the things that really is intriguing about the whole issue of the UAS and unmanned vehicles operating is that people likened it to the internet. But it's different because the internet was going on top of a new system. It was new pipelines being put in, for the internet, new pipes for the internet to flow through, new pipes for that data to flow through. Here we've got a new technology coming into a realm where people have been flying around in it since the Wright brothers. And so it really creates a very interesting interaction of how these things are going to go. The FAA sets up Class A, Class B, Class C airspace, but how do unmanned vehicles interact in those airspaces? And so it's just a real interesting body of law and litigation, frankly, that's going to come out of it. And I don't think really we have a good sense of where that's going to go.
So I am Joe, commercial drone operator. Business is starting to pick up. I see a lot of potential, but I also see the issues. What qualifies someone to be legal counsel in the drone community? What kind of expertise should they have? What kind of certifications are available? How do you pick a drone attorney?
There really, at this point, are no certified drone attorneys. There's no, the Florida Bar, for example, certifies trusts and estate lawyers and litigators. It doesn't certify drone lawyers. So really, I think what you look for in a drone lawyer is a variety of things. Someone who's familiar with the aviation environment, preferably somebody who's a pilot. Someone who has a broad breadth of experience, because your drone law not only takes on regulatory issues, so you need somebody that understands administrative law, it takes on liability issues, so you need someone who understands the litigation and liability arena. It takes on land use issues, because if you think about it, someone being able to fly or not fly a drone in an area is a land use issue. And so, do you understand land use and where people can use it? Do you understand things like navigation easements? Do you understand what the 400-foot rule means? Those kinds of things. So you need somebody that has not just a narrow focus and background, but somebody that really can bring a holistic approach to the practice of drone law.
So basically you're taking all the fun out of it, aren't you?
Trying not to. We're really trying not to. We're trying to still make it something where it can be a free operation of drones, where people can take advantage of this Wild West and really tame it and make it into something that is hugely productive. Because if you look at some of the things, you're just walking around the show, and some of the amazing devices and systems that are out there now. This is going to be a big part of our lives for a long time, and so the sooner we figure out the best way to integrate it into our current system, the better off we're going to be.
There's no question that there's a major change coming, but to a certain extent what people don't realize is that the change is more than a technology issue or a transportation issue. This is a society that's going to change as a function of all things unmanned. You walk from one end to the other over the course of an hour or so, and you cannot get to the far end without a brain full of potential and a brain full of, oh my gosh, how are they going to solve this and how are they going to solve that? So the legal issues, I would imagine, for quite some time are really going to be difficult to at least identify first and then solve down the line. But most important down the line, they're going to probably evolve pretty rapidly.
I think it will evolve very rapidly because of the rapid growth of the industry. You know, similar to the way that the law of the internet, the law of electronic communications have developed quickly with, now there's statutes on electronic signatures and statutes on electronic transmission of documents and things like that. You're going to see more and more law develop on what you can do with your unmanned system, what you can do with an autonomous system, what kind of controls, what kind of safety measures do you need to have on them. The whole thing with being able to identify a drone without having to see its ID number, with having the transmitted ID numbers, those kinds of things are going to be very vital, I think, in moving forward, because if someone does something wrong, you're going to be able to find out who they are, not just, oh, it was that silver drone that flew over at 8 o'clock last night.
Well, what's interesting, we talked to, of course, Earl Lawrence from the FAA this morning, and then Brian Wynne, who is the leadership for AUVSI, and they're both, I would say, cautiously enthusiastic about the near term and very much enthusiastic about the long term. But there's certainly going to be a lot of growth in how this industry learns to interact with the rest of the world. And I can imagine that this is the area where the legal system is going to be a significant contributor to how this all gets done.
It really will. I think the legal system is going to help build the framework in which the whole industry can operate. I was at the discussion, the workshop with Earl and Mr. Wynne yesterday, and it was very interesting to listen to them speak about these kinds of issues. And I would predict that you see some of it here, but I think you're going to see more and more solution providers at the future shows. You're going to see people that are more and more focused on, here's how you navigate the system to be able to operate safely and commercially and make money at it. Because I think the other issue that's going to be a challenge is, with all these thousands of competitors out there, there's only a certain number that are going to be able to survive. So the monetization of it to allow people to survive is going to be another challenge.
What advice do you give to a new operator, and they're freshly licensed, they're either operating an airframe or utilizing, well, another one would be, of course, utilizing the services of a commercial drone operator. What are the immediate things that they need to resolve? What cautions do you have so that they can go out and be reasonably intelligent about operating in this Wild West we've been speaking about?
Well, if you're an operator, if you're a commercial operator, I think obviously, number one, make sure that you've got all your FAA regulations and certifications. Number two, make sure that you have operation manuals and checklists that meet industry standards. So that's a combination of the FAA checklists, your manufacturer's checklist for your airframes, and so forth. So you want to make sure that you're operating in the most industry reasonable standards so that you're following best practices. You want to use checklists. We as pilots always learn checklists are your life. You know, you need to go through the checklist, because the one time you don't, that's the time you're going to forget to put the landing gear down and land it belly up. And so those are the kinds of things. You've got to have manuals, you got to have operational procedures, you got to have checklists, got to have insurance, and you've got to do it that way every day. And then you have to have a management review process where you make sure that those things are done. So, you know, it's checklists and manuals are great, but unfortunately a lot of times they get put on a shelf. You have to have the management supervision, whether you're the operator or whether you're using a commercial drone operator as a third party, to make sure that they're doing things the right way all the time.
And I would assume, like the age-old adage of the person who represents themselves, that to a certain extent trying to do all this by yourselves is foolishness.
It's sort of like teaching yourself brain surgery. It doesn't work very well. You know, you don't want to learn it on your own. You're much better off to go somebody who is licensed and who is liable for the advice they give you. And you know, the good drone lawyers, the people who understand it, are going to research the topics, because every topic is different. And what I'm finding, the more I get into it, the more I advise clients, is I'm researching other areas of the law that apply and may have a bearing on their UAS operations. So it's really it's a continually evolving in my mind and in my practice.
This is going to be a big area of specialization in the future, isn't it?
I think it is, and the way you can tell is essentially all of the AmLaw 100 largest law firms are now setting up unmanned vehicle and unmanned systems operations and segments of their practice. So they must see something's kind of there, and I think I certainly do as well. And it's definitely something that's going to be a major area for the law going forward.
We touched on this before about the fact that there really isn't a certification program as yet as there would be for different kinds of law practices. For Joe or Jane Q drone operator, what should they be looking for when they decide, oh, wait a second, I'm getting in over my head. I need to go over my manual and make sure I'm doing everything right. I need to make sure I'm properly insured. And most important, I need to make sure that the FAA isn't going to come and get me 10 minutes after I start operating. How do you, right now, search for that kind of specialization?
Really, it's very difficult for the John and Jane public. I think really what you need to look for is someone who has written in the industry, who has been starting to be a part of the industry, as part of the industry, who understands aviation and who understands all the other elements of the law that apply on the operation of unmanned vehicles.
You know, one of the things I've noted, I've talked to a number of people throughout the industry that are starting to specialize, and it's funny, we're actually seeing some breakout into specializations within the specializations. And I find it absolutely fascinating, especially when we've got ponderous issues like what is ultimately going to happen with the whole issue of federal preemption when you've got one person who's got a real estate bug up there, you know what, who started the whole Tom's River thing, which thankfully got stopped, but that was all a personality issue. And yet, had that been law, that would have been an absolute nightmare to deal with.
Well, and I think, and you hit on an issue that I think is going to be one of the biggest issues that we're going to see, is the whole issue of preemption and state and local regulation of drone operations, because that's where you're really going to end up with some issues, is who really controls the operation in a particular area.
My goodness. What have you learned from being here so far? What has impressed you about the industry now that you're here at AUVSI?
What's impressed me about the industry is the diversity of it. You've got everything from small operators and drone as a service providers to some of the largest companies in the world here, all participating in the show, all doing things in this industry. And I think it's really going to be a very, very interesting move forward for the whole world, frankly, as to how these operate. And some of the things that are going to be big issues are trans-border operations. You know, if you're doing a pipeline monitoring on the Texas-Mexico border,
there is a nightmare.
How do you deal with that one? You know, those are the kinds of things that I think we've just got more and more issues, even international law issues, that are going to come into play.
Well, I just can't imagine, as a pilot and somebody coming out of the test pilot community, I learned what I had to keep up with there. but the vagaries of the law, especially between all the different types of jurisdictions, as well as the practices involved, that just sounds like not a whole lot of fun to me.
It's very complex because what you're getting now, and because of the issue on preemption, is you're getting municipalities passing drone regulations that you can be in one municipality and you're fine, you go a half a mile away and now you're violating somebody's law. How do you know that? How do you know those operations? Yeah, you've already gone in and got your 107 approval to operate in that area. But now what are you going to do when the city of whoever comes up and says, but you can't do that here? And so who gets to win? Mm-hmm. And I think you're going to see some serious preemption battles going on as time moves forward.
It needs to happen sooner or later, because if we thought the industry overall was a Wild West, the preemption issue alone is going to be, or has the potential to be, an unruly, absolutely unregulable nightmare.
Well, and the real issue is going to be, where does airspace start? That's the first question. You know, the FAA has control over airspace. Where does airspace really start, and where do you begin to create a navigation easement? So those are the real issues.
Well, and it also depends on the guy with a shotgun in Tennessee who thinks that his drone is looking through his daughter's window.
Exactly. Yep. So.
Oh man, you ever get one of those? I want to have the popcorn and watch that one.
It's going to be a fun case.
Oh goodness gracious, Patrick, Neale, we appreciate you spending time with us. For those who are looking for information on legal practices within the drone community, how can they reach you?
They can go to my website, patrickneale.com, or call me at the office, 239-642-1485.
Patrick, appreciate your time.
Aero-News Network's coverage of the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International's Exponential 2017, live from Dallas, Texas, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors. Continental Motors Group. Manned and unmanned, Continental has been a pivotal part of aviation and aerospace history and wants to be a part of your mission. Gas or diesel, certified or experimental, Continental is investing in your future. www.continentalmotors.aero.
Let Patrick Neale & Associates provide the legal expertise needed to navigate the commercial UAS industry. Whether it be waivers, exemptions, operational plans, or other issues, we can provide the guidance you need to keep flying and building your successful UAS operation. www.droneattorneys.us.
In collaboration with NASC, introducing Sonex Aerospace, bringing you the Taros Group 4 UAS, the redesigned TIGERSHARK Block 4, and the Subsonics Twinjet UAS, all derived from flight-proven manned systems, not concepts, real aircraft. More at SonexAerospace.com.